My dad was a Vietnam veteran. We've been around cannabis and CBD our whole lives. He would tell me that without it, he literally couldn't walk out of the house. His PTSD was so severe. The whole history of prohibition anyways, it's so unfortunate. It was so racially motivated as well as big corporation motivated. How do we break through to people that were misguided with all of the prohibition that's happened? A great brand is one that is built on trustworthiness qualities, from your internal policies and structure and how you treat your team members and your advisors. You see that the products that you put out there help. That really justifies all of the hard work in launching a CPG brand, because it's more work and more money than anyone would ever tell you.
Welcome to the Generation Hustle Podcast, a show that explores the world of business, entrepreneurship, and culture, all centered around the millennial. I'm your co-host Sherson, alongside my good friend Amin, and this week we're exploring the world of CBD and all it has to offer. Episode 49 is with Davina Kaonohi, co-founder and CEO of Element Apothec. Element Apothec is an innovative and purpose-driven consumer brand focused on CBD wellness and body care products. It was established with one goal in mind: to create a line of natural and organic CBD-infused skincare and wellness products which combine the healing powers of nature with the ingenuity of innovation. The journey began a decade ago when one co-founder, afflicted with 8 autoimmune disorders, started creating custom body care blends that eased her pain, nourished her skin, and helped her feel better. Today, Element has expanded to more than 40 products, including lotions, body butters, roll-ons, tinctures, and supplements. So we speak with Davina about her journey in the cannabis and CPG space, how CBD has changed her life and that of her customers, and how she successfully built her brand and online presence. We hope you enjoy. Yeah, Davina, thank you so much for being on the show today. One of the things, like I mentioned before, that we're exploring is kind of the exploration of the beauty space. And so today we'll kind of talk about, getting into, the CPG space, specifically in your industry. Also talk about some of the things around, CBD and its application and the science behind why you chose to go that way. And also kind of like some tangible things for founders in terms of growing your presence online and building something like a Shopify store or whatever it may be, and how to kind of deconstruct that almost per se. Let's get right into it. First thing I want to kind of talk about is the kind of one of the most monumental things that for most CPG brands is when they enter retail. And by retail, we mean, large companies like maybe a Target or a Walmart or whatever it may be. But can you help us understand why so many brands seek this route to scale their business and rather than stay D2C?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting as a founder of a company and looking to launch a CPG company, and you evaluate your distribution channels, and one of it is, obviously retail is a complementary channel to D2C, and the reason, for example, even we're looking at it because it increases your distribution. It allows more people to have access to your products, giving more brand awareness that also can then result in people coming back to your store as well.
Right.
But really, it provides a really great distribution channel. I think that the thing that people think, though, is all of a sudden you're on shelf and it's easy. And that's really where the work begins, because now you have to, people, especially if you're a new brand, they may not know about you. And so how can you engage influencers to drive them maybe to the store to promote your products being there? How do you let your customers know that they don't have to wait to get your product shipped to them, that they can now go to the store and buy it on shelf? And so we've kind of taken a approach where we've really focused on D2C for the first few months, and now we're looking to explore retail partnerships and have retail review meetings coming up, because we wanted to at least have some brand awareness. If we were just a new product, then no one would have any idea about us, but really building out some of those marketing channels. But it is a really viable channel for people. I also think if you're looking to grow and scale to a larger capacity than just being a small business, you're going to need those bigger distribution channels to really get to the numbers that you're wanting to, especially for us. We're fundraising, and investors are asking us how many retail shelves do we plan on, and what does that result in, but also building in, like I said, the downside, because maybe you end up having a retail partnership and the distribution doesn't end up being as successful as you want, and really thinking about partnering with the right companies and also positioning your product. For us, where we have a higher end product. So maybe going into a Walmart probably wouldn't be the best decision
Right.
for our product, but really positioning yourself where you can be successful and where your market might be shopping at.
Yeah, and so you just mentioned that you're, exploring some meetings with some of these retailers. So could you kind of walk us through the typical process and what an individual would need to do to prepare to get into these meetings? And then once you're pitching, what you should be selling these retailers on?
Yeah, I mean, it's the process starts with really knowing your business and your company and presenting that through a sales deck, a sales brochure is almost the first step that you need to take, making sure that you've really thought about your margins. And
Hmm.
there's so many things. I've learned so many incredible things about what retail partnerships look like, and there's free case packs that they expect, and what are your annual and your quarterly discounts and sales and what happens with refunds. There's so many things that you have to think about. So really understanding all of your pricing and what actually goes into some of these retail relationships, I think is the first step. And then from that, building out your sales brochure, your sales deck, really fine tuning what that pitch presentation is going to be like. And then starting to reach out. There's places like Range Me, which allows you to connect directly with customers or retail partnerships and building out that sales list. We are actually partnered with a sales consulting company that is focused on higher end niche markets and working with emerging brands. So they've done some of the outreach for us, some of it we've done on our own.
Yep.
And then when you get into those meetings, you're connecting with a person, and of course they want to make sure that your product's going to be successful in the store, but they also care about your story and your why, and really, you know and they build relationships. So it's really establishing that relationship. This is someone you're going to be probably working with for a long
Right.
time. There may be challenges that come up, so you want to make sure that you present yourself as a real person, share your story about why you're doing it, and your products at that point, if you've already gotten to the meeting, they should sell themselves. They've already felt confident that the products that you have would fit into their market. So that would be my recommended advice.
No, that's awesome. And I also agree with the whole point of building the relationship and then selling the story. Because I think, especially with the CPG brand, the story is a huge narrative for why someone would want to buy your product. And then just kind of transitioning that through a retailer too. So finding the right partner is also, again, really key. But could you also kind of mention some of the challenges that exist once you actually are in retail? Because you did mention earlier that now you have to look at how to market your product a bit differently, the increase in potential supply that you need to kind of provide these retailers.
Right.
So how do you kind of prepare for that, and then how do you forecast for the future?
Yeah, I mean, for us, and a lot of it was really building out these kind of projections and modeling of what can you expect in terms of returns, how much marketing money do you need to look to consider for each retail partnership to actually, and some of them require it that you actually put a certain marketing spend to
Right.
be able to get on shelf with them. And building out all of that, like I said, some of them require free product and specific discounts. So really thinking about all of those details. I've talked to a couple people recently that had horror stories going into
Right.
retail. One of them, she said, literally almost caused their company. They had at some point, 20 or 30 million valuation, and almost caused them to go under because they couldn't meet the demand of the retailer.
Mm,
The discounting, they didn't realize, actually minimized their margins, where they were actually losing money with
losing
a lot of
money.
the
Yeah.
retail relationships. So it's really, I think for me, it's more just planning ahead. The recommendation is thinking through all of your numbers and being really tight on what the expectations are, and then preparing to, now that your product's on shelf, it's not going to just sell itself if a customer doesn't know about it or know who you are, in place, import those marketing strategies to tell your customers, hey, we're here now. And I think influencers is a really good way to go. I've seen a lot of companies, we're exploring that path as soon as we launch in a couple other
Right.
retail stores, to start driving influencers and working specifically with the stores to promote customers to come in.
No, that's awesome. And do you think there's one thing that a founder of a CPG brand is usually kind of surprised with when they finalize a retail partnership. Like you just mentioned, a horror story around discounting and stuff like that. Are there any other things that, usually founders are like, oh, I didn't know that, kind of thing?
I mean, for me, was the free fills that, that I didn't understand, which is basically, if we buy this much, then you have to give us this much for free. I had no idea
Oh, wow. Okay.
that exists, but it's really common, especially, I mean, for example, the CBD space is very competitive, right?
Right.
There's thousands of brands out there and everybody vying for this position. And so you have to look at the retailers, their businesses also, and wanting to maximize their returns as well. So that was surprising to me because I wasn't expecting. In some retail stores, that's how you start. Even that also is a
Right.
surprise for me. Is that they're not even buying your product initially. They're asking you to basically give it to them for free. They're going to
Yeah.
test it out with their customers and determine if they even want to move forward with you, which at that point could put you at a loss.
For sure, you said it there too. The CBD space is very competitive. So let's talk about Element itself. Can you tell us about the story and kind of what inspired you to founding this company? One of the reasons that we asked that is because obviously the CBD space is very competitive. The beauty space is very competitive. And so like bringing those two worlds together is kind of something new and something that we haven't seen just yet. So can you talk to us about that? Like what excited you to get into that space? And can you talk to us about the products of Element itself?
So the story is interesting. Although we're a new brand, we say we're 8 years in the making. And that's because my great aunt 8 years ago had been diagnosed with many different medical conditions and autoimmune diseases. And her prognosis at best was bedridden and not for many years, and at worst, not much time to live. So she actually decided at that point, if I'm going to be in bed, I might as well feel good while I'm in bed
Right.
and create products that maybe will help my skin feel better or at least make me look good when I take pictures of myself, and make me feel good so I can rest better. So I maybe have some relief. My, body's not hurting me so much. And so I actually have a sister who's also was a grower at the time. So she provided her with her first cannabis seedlings and helped her understand how to grow cannabis. My dad was a Vietnam veteran. We've been around cannabis and CBD our whole lives and understand the value of it. He would tell me that without it, he literally couldn't walk out of the house or sleep
Right.
at night. His PTSD was so severe. So we grew up thinking that this was an okay thing to use. Also, my culture is Polynesian, and it's very much accepted in that culture. So when she started getting sick, she turned to cannabis, but she also started turning to other alternative remedies, and looking at what Eastern medicine was doing, and how could she create products that could help her. And so she just started exploring things, and in her kitchen, and the little bit of time she could be out of bed making stuff, but it actually started helping her not only look better or feel a little bit better, but it actually started making her be able to get out of bed, and people noticed it and would ask her, hey, I see that's working for you, can you make me something? I have this, I have that. And so she became like the local apothecary. Over the years she's created over 40 products to
Wow.
help people. I like always tell friends, do you realize what you're putting on your face, and do you realize what you're washing your hair with, and do you know what you're cleaning your house
Mm-hmm.
with? And so I'm passionate about the clean beauty, clean conscious consumerism, organic products and stuff like that. And she knew that. And so even building out her website, we incorporated that. But she had no idea, really. Technology seems really complicated to her.
Right.
So I was also at a transition point in my career where I had finished up a company that I was working on. We decided not to move forward with it. And she said, I really want my products to go from the kitchen to the world. I feel like I was given a gift, and I can help so many more people. And at that point, I took that challenge on and took over the business, because I really could see. I bought her products for friends, for parents. I used them for myself, for my family, and I knew that they worked. I knew all of the work and experience and thought that went into creating the product. So that basically created Element Apothec. But we went further and said, okay, we have these great products, but we're asking people to put this on their face. We're asking people to put this on
Right.
their body to ingest them. So we brought on a medical advisory team and an integrative pharmacist, an integrative medical doctor, integrative dermatologist to really look at the products and make sure that they were efficacious and safe, and that they were in the right percentages, that there wasn't an ingredient that was there just to be there. Every ingredient really serves a purpose, which I think is something that a lot of people, especially in the CBD space, they'll take a lotion, they throw in CBD, and they're like, now you have a
Yeah.
CBD lotion. but there's so much opportunity. Like our lotion has over 18 ingredients. Every single ingredient serves a purpose. You have an opportunity to create really functional products for people. And that's what she needed. She didn't want to apply 10 different balms. She wanted one balm. She didn't want to have to take all these supplements. She wanted one tincture to be able to take. So that was kind of how we got into this space. And it's interesting because you mentioned the kind of convergence of beauty and CBD. So some of the products she made was because she did want to, have a face lotion or a face serum that could help her not only with the dryness of being at home and stuck in bed, but she just wanted to look in the mirror, even though her body wasn't feeling good, but to look good. And that made her feel a little bit better. So that's how some of the beauty products ended up, the face serum or the lotion that we have ended up getting created was, because she just wanted to feel good and look good. And I think that is such a thing everybody wants that, especially even now in COVID, even though you're home, you want to look in the mirror and be like, oh, I feel good. And knowing what you're putting on your face is clean and safe. We have people that said they use our face serum now and they have taken away all of their morning routine. They put on our face serum, they put on lipstick, and they're ready to go for the day. And it's just amazing. And people complimenting them on their skin, and then they've slept well at night because they've used our tincture that helps them sleep better. And you see that the products that you're put out there help. That really justifies all of the hard work in launching a CPG brand, because it's more work and more money than anyone would ever tell you.
Yeah, for sure. No, that's an incredible story. And I really like that you mentioned, the fact that we really don't know what we put on our faces and our skins. Otherwise, we kind of just, take what we're
or in
told.
our bodies, to be honest.
Yeah.
Exactly. We kind of just take whatever advertising we're told as is. So to that point, can you kind of talk to the actual benefits of CBD itself? Obviously, it's a natural product. It's coming from cannabis. So can you speak to how it helps you, like the things that it actually helps you with, and how those products kind of can be used on an everyday basis for those things, and kind of like the formulation of that? You mentioned, you actually had a team come in to help you. So can you speak to that process, like of formulating the products and what they actually do?
In our bodies, we have an endocannabinoid system. We're born with it. That endocannabinoid system, those main receptors are CB1 and CB2 receptors that go literally throughout our entire bodies, through our organs, our skin. It complements and supplements all of the systems that we learn about in school. And it's just starting to really be recognized and understand that we do have this endocannabinoid system. Our body naturally produces some cannabinoids, and early on in our diet, I think there's a lot of things with terpenes and other cannabinoids that you can get not just from CBD that were part of early human diets that maybe have been eliminated or changed. And then there's the phytocannabinoids, which are the supplemental plants like CBD, cannabis, that then come in and really pair perfectly, providing what our endocannabinoid system needs. And so from a kind of, biological perspective, it isn't just a snake oil. There actually is medical research to substantiate how cannabinoids work within our body. And each cannabinoid, THC is a cannabinoid, CBD is a cannabinoid. There's some other minor cannabinoids, CBG, CBC, CBN, that there's hundreds of cannabinoids they expect, and they're just beginning to be researched as now we can research them and understand them. Each of those cannabinoids work within different areas of those receptors. So THC often operates more on, the CB1 receptor, which is more in our brain, and then the CB2 receptor is more with CBD and some of the other minor cannabinoids. And so when you create products, it's really looking at the functional properties that you're trying to help with those products that you're working in, and what parts of those receptors are you trying to trigger to make them be as effective as possible. And it's fascinating. There's so much to learn. They're finally starting to incorporate some of this even into medical school, and there's supplementary education, extensions, and like UC Riverside and some schools are now incorporating cannabis education. So when you look at creating products, it really is kind of taking that step back and saying, how can we help a human body actually function well, and how do we help these products trigger those receptors? And then there's combinations of essential oils and plant-based remedies, and even within the cannabis and CBD plant, there's terpenes and different things that all work in conjunction with that endocannabinoid system or within our brain and functions as well.
For sure. Yeah, that's incredible. I think we're just kind of scratching the surface about
Yeah.
all the benefits that are coming from this. So, like you mentioned, I think once the researchers kind of get going, we're going to get more of these reports and more of these details that will help kind of push that narrative forward with this kind of journey. So, along that kind of train of thought, can you speak to kind of the process itself of getting approval for a product like this?
Anybody could take a product and start selling CBD products. There's not really any requirements. The Farm Bill passed in 2018, which said that it has to have below 0.3% of THC.
Okay.
But within that structure, it's really a free for all, which is kind of unfortunate because and there's a lot of products. I mean, the FDA, FTC continue to test products that test under even what people are saying. If they say it's 500 milligrams of CBD, there may only be 50 milligrams or 100 milligrams. There's really not much regulation on it, which has allowed, I think, over 3,000 brands have launched in the last 2.5 years since the Farm Bill passed because of that, because anyone could basically take a product or go to a manufacturer and slap their label on it and push something out. It's left a lot of confusion for the consumer. In other countries, like in Canada or the UK, there are much more regulations. Like in the UK, they have the novel food certification that you have to get, and Canada has similar processes as well, where it is a little bit more regulated. We hope to get there, and there's talks of a couple different paths that they can take in the US to make cannabis or CBD considered more of a supplement, and what those regulations look like. But it really puts the responsibility on the company to be able to educate consumers in terms of building trustworthy products and being transparent with your COAs, which is your certificate of analysis, to say we're not hiding behind anything. Here's what we say is in our product, and here's actually what's in our product. But really, unfortunately, a lot of that responsibility is put on the consumer to have to research and vet these companies, because there isn't this regulation. So it makes it tricky, and it's also turned some people away from it because they've been disheartened with, the lack of trust and transparency that has existed with some of the companies in this space. So for us, we've taken it as, all right, this is our opportunity to really build a trustworthy quality, to be 100% transparent with everything that we do. So the consumer can at least feel like, okay, I can trust this brand, or at least even educate them to say, if you're not buying from us and you're buying from someone else, here's the things that you should think about when you're purchasing these types of products.
No, I think that's really powerful, just because a lot of brands don't think about trust and authenticity. For example, I guess in your space, maybe someone has a large marketing budget and they're just going to be shooting out dollars marketing spend just to convert sales. They don't really care about who's buying this. But I think long-term, that's definitely not going to work out, right? So people are going to figure out eventually that this is a hoax versus what you guys are doing. You're educating individuals. And I think there's so much more needed to be done in terms of education around the whole cannabis space and the health benefits, and also demystifying some of those the taboos around cannabis and stuff like that. There's still a lot of that. We know this is just a generational phase thing. I think millennials are way, way, way more receptive to any of this. So have you kind of seen some of that yourself in terms of maybe your buyer profiles, or just individuals you've dealt with personally in terms of like getting onto the shelves or, selling?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny you say that, even with demystifying it, because I have friends, when I, transitioned to launching Element Apothec, they said, I can't believe you're launching a CBD business. I'm like, what are you talking about? Cannabis for me, I have a picture. I think I was 5 months old. I'm proudly sitting next to my dad's cannabis plant with my hair everywhere and this biggest smile. And I said, I'm so thankful that I actually get to be in this space and helping people learn and educate them about the benefits of how this plant works with our bodies and create products that really help people. But it definitely shifts more towards kind of the millennial age group in terms of understanding and being just open to alternative remedies. The whole history of prohibition anyways, it's so unfortunate, was so racially motivated, as well as, big corporation motivated, with paper and all of the stuff that happened. And so if we can start continuing to tell that story of even why there initially was prohibition, and people start opening their eyes and realize, I mean, there's a show or something on YouTube that's called Hemp for Victory. It's put out by the US government. We used all of our sails and our ropes and everything on the early Navy ships were all made from hemp. And so people start to look at things and say, wow, I didn't understand that happened. Or in early apothecary shops, there's the bottle of cannabis that's sitting on the shelf, and people use this. So you start changing those conversations. But I think there are certain age groups and ranges that are more open to it. And
Right.
then now it's how do we break through to people that were misguided with all of the prohibition that's happened.
Yeah, and it's funny that you say that because we actually did a small little podcast on exactly that. So we got inspired by Joe Rogan, who made comments around the hemp industry.
Right.
And like, I forgot the individual's name, Sherston, maybe you remember the guy's name.
Yeah,
and how he used his influence on like the paper mills and all that stuff to take out hemp because
first.
Yeah, there you are. There. Yeah. So it's just like, holy shit, we didn't realize like this is a whole little there's something happening in the background that we just didn't realize. So
yeah, I mean the racial stuff was one of the biggest motivators, I think, because it was a way to put a particular culture in a bad light, and they used it for their political agendas to talk about immigration and stuff like that. So I mean, if you really start understanding it, it was racially, and then obviously corporate regulated to cause the prohibition to happen. It's just so ridiculous. I mean, it's the whole shift of even like not using marijuana, because marijuana at that point was considered a bad word almost, and shifting those conversations to say that's part of what led to prohibition. So let's not use that word anymore. Let's use cannabis instead.
I'm forgetting the word of that, or the title of that video, where they kind of put out like a propaganda where people are getting high in a party.
Reefer madness.
Yes, people forget about that. Like, I don't think this generation knows that video at all. But if you see now, we look back at it like, what are we talking about?
It was definitely a world that we are trying to evolve and get away from. So luckily, we're starting to see changes. But just kind of shifting over to now, say it's just like building the online presence and a brand. First, could you help us like define what you feel like a great brand is, and then maybe walk us through what your strategy has been to like say increase engagement through your socials, and what has worked, what hasn't worked?
For me and for us as a company, I mean, truly a great brand is one that is built on trustworthiness qualities. And that's in everything that you do, from your internal policies and structure and how you treat your team members and your advisors, to the quality of the products that you push out, and what are the pillars that you stand on that matter to you as a company, and holding true, having that thread weave through everything that you do in your organization. It's why for us being B Corp certified, we're in the pending B Corp process, and showing people that we're not just saying it, but if you're building a brand that these things matter, then to really go through the efforts to show that this matters to you. My background was I initially started in HR and operations, and so I really understand the value of the people and the internal processes and policies and the goals that you set as a company, and then oftentimes that doesn't always translate on the other side to how they behave to the consumer and the products that they put out. So it's really tying that together and having that be really a strong foundation, I think, is really, to me, the importance of building a brand and thinking about that from day one, not after you've launched and now all of a sudden you're trying to build this great reputation, but starting with those foundational goals from the beginning, I think is something that is important. And I think some of the brands that are now starting to have success, those are the things that they talk about that mattered, and putting in that hard work to make that happen, even if it means taking a little bit longer to launch your product, or building the team out to make that happen. To me, that's important. And then as you do launch, to just always have that kind of checks and balances in mind as each step of the way as you're going through that process. And it's hard launching a CPG brand definitely takes a lot more work and a lot more money. And so, also really having good financial modeling and projections from the beginning, and checking off all of those small little details to make sure that your messaging's on point, that you've tested the market to make sure that you actually do have a product fit, that people will like your products. I've talked to a couple of founders recently who didn't do that, and they learned their lesson. They now are launching other companies and going through that process to think about those decisions ahead of time, because you just don't know what the acceptance might be of your product, or testing out those use cases, and then supplementing that with the technology that you need to actually push out what you're doing, whether if it's D2C, having a really good website, and what other technology components can you have to make sure your company's staying on target with its goals, and internal communications and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there. Like I have a few friends in the CPG space that are just like starting out, and just happen to be in the finance space, so they come to me how do we build out like a margin, or like what's a good margin? And me just I don't really have a background in CPG, so I just kind of help them describe of like, this is how like the financial statements work. And how a business model would generally work, because most individuals do not have a financial background, and as soon as they talk about numbers, they just get confused. So I just enjoy just talking to them sometimes, and like they confuse like, say, profit equals cash kind of thing. That's the one concept I always tell them, it's not the same thing, right? Don't confuse it the same thing, right? And so it's just a lot of these conversations. But, you also mentioned a point where, you have to have technology enable kind of some of the triggering in terms of the sales. What have you done in terms of like tools, and what have you utilized to kind of increase checkout rates or basket size, or reduce like shopping cart abandonment? Like, what is your strategy around that?
I mean, a lot of it is, first off, just building a really good website and getting that user feedback. Because, we even built a website and we're like, this looks great. And then we got feedback on people saying, well, what do you even do? You don't even say that you have CBD products on your, your landing image. And I'm like, oh yeah, we don't. We have this great image here, but it doesn't even say what our products actually do for somebody. We use Shopify for our platform. We were on WooCommerce before and shifted over just because there's so many incredible plugins, and a lot of even online marketplaces all partner with Shopify. And so we ended up moving that route, but doing a lot of customizations and just using the Shopify templates, which can work for a lot of people, but we also wanted to have a little bit more within that framework. And so then thinking about the technology that supports it with our email marketing, we use Klaviyo for our email marketing and all of the email flows that happen if somebody comes to the site and collecting their email, and if they add to the cart, abandoned cart, all of that supplements really well. And then having all of that translate into also other tools that we can use to reach back out to them. We have a contest wheel that pops up, and there's so many different add-ons. It gets confusing sometimes, I think, on Shopify. It can, because you want everything. You're like, oh, I can get this affiliate plugin, and I can get this contest plugin, and I can get all of these things. But also, they all slow your site down, so you have to think and be really thoughtful about all of those decisions that you make, and not just bombard your site with a whole bunch of really cool, interesting plugins, because it may actually have a opposite effect in your sites too slow that people leave, and none of that really matters to begin with anyways. And then we have on the back end, we have QuickBooks and QuickBooks Commerce, which helps manage all of the logistics and actually sending information to our shipping company to send out products to the consumer. So having all of those, the technology, as you mentioned, all integrated really helps to automate a lot of those processes. But in the beginning, the work is, all those email flows have to be built, and you have to think about what your messaging is, and not just using the standard stuff that's out there, because customers know the same email I got from 10 other companies. Like, why did you not take time to actually send me something different? So there's a lot of work to get all of that set up, but once you do have it set up, it really does help and allow you to focus back on the things that are important, which is the ongoing improvement on messaging and customer retention, and continuing to build new products and creative marketing avenues that you can use to get that brand awareness as a new brand.
For sure. I think that feedback is really important. I mean, pretty much on every step, from your website to your product to your culture, everything, right? And so, like, one of the things that you mentioned earlier was that CPG is hard. It's a tough business to be in. There's so much work to do. There's so much kind of logistics to be on top of. And one thing that we've kind of noticed from a lot of CPG founders that we worked with is, just their network, right? Just they're able to lean in on their network and get some help just from people so that they're not struggling to kind of learn new things or anything like that. So can you tell us maybe how that has helped you at all?
People that have helped us has been absolutely invaluable. And that's from everything from the customers that have given us feedback in terms of usability of the site and how it actually functions. We've also relied really heavily on an advisor team. We have, I think we have 8 people on our advisory team, and in each one with functional expertise, whether that's in sales or branding, finance. And they're not just advisors that we've met with once and we're like, hey, can you be on our advisory board? So it looks good, but some of them I meet with weekly or at minimum bi-weekly to really provide their insight and knowledge in terms of this is what we've done. Don't make the same mistake. This is a tool that you might want to use. Here's some strategies we've employed. And then also I'm part of several female founding networking groups and other CPG groups like Startup CPG is great too. To post questions, and OMG CPG I think is another one that's been really valuable to be able to go on there and ask other founders that have been in this space and launched CPG companies, what tools do you use? How did you handle this situation? What advice might you give? And I go in there every morning and read the post, even if just to gain that continual insight and knowledge from people and not being afraid to ask questions or get on Slack and ask people what they've done before. I mean, there's no reason not to rely on the people that are around you. Like you mentioned, your friends come to you because you have finance background. And so, we all have people that have really incredible experience around us. And it's just being comfortable to lean on people. And people are so, I mean, in the CPG space, I was in the internet space for a while, and I don't know, it's in technology space, the CPG space. I've realized people are so willing to help you and to share their stories and their experiences and when they made mistakes and how they overcame those mistakes more than any industry of experience. So it's really, even though it's hard, it's a lot of work. It's also great to have this network of people, and so rewarding to get your products in customers' hands when they really are enjoying the experience of your product. So it makes it also worth it.
On that note, like, what would you say is the best piece of advice for entering the beauty space, or just running a company on your own, founding a company of your own to stand out? Like, what would be your best piece of advice? Maybe something that you've learned along the way, or that something that you've kind of gathered from others?
In terms of the advice, I mean, I just think go for it. If you're passionate about what you're doing, if you know people, if you have a good product, people have experience. Like, so a lot of CPG founders, I think, come from starting, maybe it's an idea or they've made something at home and they liked it, or something they see an opportunity. It will be hard to begin with, and sometimes finding that initial funding and leaning on friends and family to help support you, but just go for it, because there's no better day than today to start. I think, for me, even I sat around a little bit like, should I do this, not do this? I mean, that day that I made that decision, I've never looked back from it. As long, for me, because it satisfies my why. I'm really passionate about it. Don't just try to get into a space because, this is a beauty CBD and it's an open market, I can make a lot of money, but really be passionate about what you're doing. Because on those days when it's hard, or on those days when it's amazing, it just makes it all that much better.
We talked about it earlier. There's a lot of brands just coming out with CBD and cannabis on the label, and they just throw some goop into a container and sell it to you, right? Yeah. And just hearing your story and kind of what you stand for and why you're doing this, it's clear that it resonates with your why, directly. So I think that's incredible. That kind of like wraps up the content portion around your business. We wanted to understand, what Element is doing and what we have to offer. one thing that we like to do is kind of just end off with a lightning round where we toss some quick questions at you just to understand you a bit better. And so I'm going to shoot some quick questions and just let me know the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay.
First off here, can you tell us your favorite book of all time?
I would say it's Daring Greatly by Brene Brown. I probably read that book like once a quarter, just as a good reminder.
I love it. I love it. Once a quarter. How many times do you think you've read that now?
Oh my gosh, I can't even count how many times I've read it. I don't always read the whole thing, but I'll go through. It's just a good book in terms of especially launching a business, and I mean through all different stages of my life, but especially launching a business now, and it's just that reminder of what's important. And I think many leaders forget that they need to be vulnerable and how to challenge themselves, and being able to sit with yourself on those days is just so important.
Next question here. You've had a long day. You come home. How do you like to unwind after a busy day?
I actually just like to garden, sit outside and garden is what I enjoy.
Can you tell us maybe the best piece of advice that you've received? This can be related to work or life, just anything in general.
Just to be comfortable with yourself, with who you are, and know that you're doing the best job that you can in any given moment.
And last but not least, we like to save this because it tends to get people into a controversial spot here. Do you like pineapples on your pizza?
I do like pineapples on my pizza. I could see how that could be complicated because I've had many people go, "You like pineapple on your pizza?"
Davina, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I think the CBD industry and just the space itself is about to explode, and there's a lot of good that can be taken from these products. So I think you're going to be helping a lot of people, whether that's educating them or just giving them a product that's going to help give them a better quality of life. So we're looking forward to the future of CBD and the future of Element.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so
how
much
can
for
people
having
find
me.
you, by the way?
Yeah, so we're on our website is elementapothec.com. We have our Instagram as well, Element Apothec, and LinkedIn, Facebook. It's all Element Apothec on there.